Welcome to Behaviorally Speaking Leadership for Changemakers, where leadership is grounded in behavior, guided by dignity, and designed for change. I'm your host, Dr. Esther Bubb. Let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Peter. Hi, Paul, Lily, Brandon, and Zadie. Thanks so much for joining us for session 3 in our 4-session series. And so, as usual, very happy to have you here tonight. And so Lily just told me Brandon won an award. So I just want to shout out Brandon. Congrats on the work that you're doing there. And so let's start off today just kind of really talking a little bit more. We've talked about it so far, but because tonight we're really focusing on, solutions for challenges and solving community issues, we want to talk about the leadership journey, but in that context. So Zadie, let's get started with you, right? Just talking about your leadership journey for a bit as it relates to community issues. So what community issue first made you realize that, simply noticing a problem wasn't enough? So it doesn't matter where we live, right? Or where we're from, there are issues and problems everywhere. And sometimes there might be what is called the bystander effect. So we see something, but we don't say anything. We don't do anything. What made you realize that seeing a problem wasn't enough, that you wanted to become part of the solution?
So, as many people would know, I'm very passionate about mental health advocacy and, making sure that mental health services and support is accessible to everyone. So definitely that is the first problem that I would have noticed in my community especially. And I realized that, simply waiting on government services to put out something that's accessible to the public isn't enough. The community needs to come together and individuals need to also put in their input to ensure that mental health is accessible to everyone. So that is what made me want to become a part of the solution. And that's what, encouraged me to find solutions to rectify that issue. The issue being the lack of mental health support services in my community and, of course, across Grenada.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Zadie. It's really an important topic and an important area that society or individuals need support with. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you've done specifically with mental health and, the progress you've made to date?
Right. So last year we would have held a national youth consultation as Grenada was getting ready to put out their first national suicide prevention plan. So okay. I was one of the main presenters at that consultation, and I would have presented data regarding youth access to mental health services, not just from my parish and my community, but island-wide. There were 100 responses within that survey, and the data that was collected was used and was very instrumental in developing the national suicide prevention plan. In addition to that, we would have hosted a couple youth focus groups in St. Andrew specifically, trying to come up with recommendations and ideas that could be used within the parish specifically to encourage more persons to seek out mental health services, the ones that are available.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Well, keep doing what you're doing. Mental health is very important. And, the stigma that surrounds it, really the more that we talk about it, the more we can, lend a hand in getting that stigma removed. So thank you for all you're doing in that respect. Brandon, let's shift to you for a little bit. So can you talk to us about someone who modeled, or showed you leadership skills in terms of solving community issues, right? And what specifically did you observe, that specific person doing, or people, if it's more than one, that made you think, you want to lead like that, you want to follow the example?
That's a very good question. And that question had me thinking really deeply and doing some deep introspection, because I perceive things a lot differently to normal people. But growing up, I had the privilege to see many people in my community, step forward and solve many problems, whether it's through church, community organization, public service, whether it is through political affiliations, whether they were through youth programs, supporting family needs, or simply giving time to help others. I admire their willingness and service. While I respect Each of them, I never felt the need to model myself after one particular person.
Okay.
Instead, I chose to learn from the best qualities in all of them. And one of the things that basically instilled in me when I was much younger in primary school, right?
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
I can learn two things: what to do and what I can do, right? What I cannot
Yeah.
do. So those are the two things that I learned from all of those great persons. But the person who gave me the framework to understand what I was seeing was John Maxwell through his books. He taught me that leadership is influence, not
Mm.
position, and that the best leaders do not just solve problems by themselves, but they develop, each other to become a part of the solution.
Yeah.
So that philosophy has resonated with me because it shows me that, real leadership is about service, humility, and I'm big on humility. Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe I'm big on very, very big on that. And leaving people stronger than you found them. So that's the kind of leader I aspire, to be. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So about the service, you spoke about John Maxwell, but you talked about people being involved, right? You're not solving the problem on your own. And so, Brandon, what we realize and what we know is that when people they feel like they're part of whatever this thing is, right? But they're more willing to jump in and support because there's some ownership and some buy-in there. So you raised a really critical point in terms of,
Yeah.
yeah, we're leading, we're serving, we're solving problems, but letting people feel, bringing them to the table. Thank you. Paul, what about you?
For me, I would say a behavior that I wish to model, and I've seen it across several individuals, both within my close knit group and within the wider community, is really servant leadership. A leader who not just talks the talk, but they walk the walk. They're down
Yeah,
on the ground, they're with the people, they're there giving the hands-on support, not just, sitting on their high horse lecturing about what needs to be done, but they're
yeah,
actually leading by example. And a few persons I could pinpoint, my dad, for example, is one like that. He loves to be on the ground, getting his hands dirty, so to speak,
yeah,
because he truly believes in, leading by example. Even my boss is another individual like that. And I think that has been one way I've been able to, grow at work and really develop a lot of the skills that I've developed. And looking within the wider community, some persons that come to mind is Andy Williams, for example, in Grandans. You even have
mm,
Ms. Delma Thomas, who I think, regardless of party, everyone can say she's one who is with the people, and when there needs to be work to be done, she gets the work done. So those are some persons that just immediately came to mind when I thought of servant leadership and what it truly means to lead by example.
So being out there on the floor, on the battlefield, right, with the people, showing up, being visible, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, wonderful. Well, let's shift into sort of like a rapid reframe section, right? So I'm going to start a sentence and whatever is the first thing that comes to mind, so word or phrase, you'll complete it. So Peter, let's start with you. Real community change starts with
Awareness.
awareness. That's a really good point because if we can use the analogy of a car, if I go to the garage and my car isn't starting, but if I don't know what the issue is, right, I can't solve the issue. So yeah, I like that. Lily, partnership means
Working together towards a common goal.
working together towards a common goal. I like that. Zadie, strong communities reinforce
Strong communities reinforce togetherness.
togetherness. I love that. Brandon, leadership grows when
Success produces humility instead of pride.
Ooh, so I love that. Humility. I love that. Paul, one behavior that brings people together is
One behavior that brings people together is camaraderie.
camaraderie. Yes, yes, yes. And Peter, one behavior that holds communities back is
Individualism.
all about the self. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. I love that. So let's talk a little bit, just shift a little bit to the behavioral aspect of the things that we do, because I always say leadership is behavior. And as a behavior analyst, any behavior anybody engages in, there's always a story, there's always a reason for it, right? We just have to find out what it is, right? So thinking of like communities, right? They often change one conversation, even us, we change one conversation, one moment, one action at a time. What are some small, Lily, some small observable behaviors that young people like yourself, right, can practice today that build trust, build humility, like some of you were saying, inspire others, show service, shows being out there, and creates that momentum, right? So it keeps going for change that solves community issues. What are some behaviors that comes to mind?
Well, the first important thing that we need to do is show up and be on time, and also to be respectful. We need to learn how to listen more so that we can respond, and respond in a way that we understand what was said and not just based on our feelings or what we think at the time. Because as a young person, sometimes we may feel like we know it all, or it's either our way or the highway. But if you really take the time to listen to another perspective, you can see, hey, maybe I was not 100% right on this, but
Yeah.
I can learn, I can grow, but I need to be present, I need to show up, and I need to be committed to being the change that we want to see.
Yeah. So being committed, so things like showing up on time, right? It's a specific observable behavior. You got there on time, being present, and you said also being open, right, to other perspectives. So for example, I might say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you may say H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, and then I should be open to be able to listen, be curious to learn, to understand, right? So being open to other perspectives, because we don't know it all, including me. So being able to learn, being open to learning from others. I love that. So Zadie, let's shift to you for a little bit. So whether, there are several of us born on the island that still live on the island, and others that have migrated to other parts, right? So whether we're on the island or in the diaspora, right now we have our homecoming. So several, of people who have migrated to the diaspora are currently back home. But it doesn't matter where we are, Zadie, whatever we do, every action we take has an influence, right? Has a result, a consequence. So when you think of solving community issues, Zadie, what leadership behaviors do you believe encourage collaboration? So where people want to work together, right? Instead of criticism, and, and where those behaviors would promote collective action instead of individualism, like, Peter said, individual effort.
So, as Brandon would have mentioned, I think humility is extremely important in a leadership context, because you have to understand that regardless of if you're the lead on a project or the leader, as the word implies, you're not bigger than the program. Everyone who's involved, their opinions matter. You also need to be empathetic, learn to listen actively, and taking different perspectives other than your own. I think that's the main thing that would encourage collective action as opposed to individual effort, like you mentioned, or just doing the actions of one person rather than the group or the community. Because as a leader, you speak for everyone and not just yourself, not just the persons in your immediate circle. So humility, definitely, and empathy.
Yeah, humility and empathy. And something you said, Zadie, made me think of, the way that we ask a question or the way that we approach someone or a group can make, a difference in the response or the outcome. So thinking of like asking, how can we, instead of why didn't you, right? How can we, as more supportive, more collective, sure, like, all right, we can do this together, as you're saying, as opposed to why didn't you, that, individual side of it, but then also the humanity that you spoke about, that Brandon also talked about. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. So in society, in life, in, whatever context we want to look at it in, there are issues that are occurring that could be a symptom of something larger, or indicating there's a larger issue, or it could on the surface just be, this is the problem, this is the issue we need to deal with. So I'll name some and just tell me your thought. There's no right or wrong answer on whether you believe it's, the larger problem or it's a symptom of something larger. So Brandon, let's start with you. What about youth disengagement. So you're very engaged, all of you, all right, are very engaged in your community and what you do. So youth disengagement, would you say like that's the problem, the larger problem, or it's a symptom of something larger?
Yes, I'm very engaged, and I would say youth disengagement is a symptom, not a root problem, because young people naturally engage with what gives them purpose, and a lot of them are trying to find purpose. So if they are disengaged, we have to ask why, and in a world where is technology, as rapidly, changing and improving, a lot of dynamics in terms of culture, has been sort of shifting. We have to ask those questions, but many, like I said, many are searching for belonging, and some turn to, when I watch on the block in my area, they turn to gambling, alcohol, drugs, and unhealthy habits, because they need a space that gives them a sense of identity. And it's shocking. A lot of them do not know what it means, who they are, their self-worth. They don't know their identity. So I would say the solution isn't simply telling young persons to do better. It's creating an environment where they feel valued, challenged and included.
Yeah. I love that. I love that whole response. And I mean, it just makes me think of what I just said. How can we instead of why didn't you, right? So, and I like that you said, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer, but it indicates there's a larger issue going on. And I like that you pointed to purpose, right? They haven't identified their purpose, right? They need to find themselves, like what it is that I'm going to do, that I want to do. And that could lend itself to increasing the engagement in activities. Yeah. So that was a really good point. Paul, limited employment opportunities, problem or symptom of something larger?
To begin with, I would say it is a symptom of something larger. I mean, yes, there may be more opportunities in some areas than others, but I believe there are ample opportunities. And where there aren't ample opportunities, that's where we be creative. So I think it's a bigger problem which stems from a lack of creativity, a lack of taking initiative, and truly a lack of understanding that where you start is not your final destination. At the end of the day, Rome wasn't built in a day. So sometimes we just have to start where we are, use our temporary situation as best as we can. But, while we're in that situation, we're laying the groundwork for planning, okay, while I'm here now, this is where I aspire to be. And so I work towards where I aspire to be. Yeah. So I think that's really the bigger challenge.
Yeah. It's such an excellent point, Paul. The P's, I was like, all right, I'm making it right. Point, Paul. Because there is work. It's whether we want to do it or not, right? And we have to start somewhere. So I've done all kinds of jobs. I was a cleaner, cleaning out movie theaters. I cleaned when I went to college, cleaning the bathrooms, like worked at fast, right? So whatever that job is, we take that job, but we keep working and doing the things, moving up to where we want to be. And I think going back to Brandon's point about engagement, the more we engage, the more we connect with people and we extend our networks, right? And, so all of those things go hand in hand. But Paul, that was a valid point in terms of starting somewhere, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Peter, brain drain, problem or symptom of a larger problem?
So I would say it's a symptom. Some may see it as a problem, but I see it as a symptom. And I would say, when you look internally or you look at particular economies, if you look at the advanced economies, you tend to see less brain drain there. You look at developing countries, you tend to see more. And obviously, each economy has their own unique gifts and advantages, but we can all work with what we have, So when we look at, let's say, in Grenada's context, we see high levels of brain drain. And I think that's a symptom of, what's happening domestically. So we all know, salaries compared to, the advanced economies. Now we know, yes, money is not all, but let's be real, it plays a part. So, if you can go elsewhere to make double, triple what you're making right back home, why wouldn't you? So, we look at salaries, even just socioeconomic conditions, cost of living.
Yeah.
You look futuristic. How if I stay here, where would I be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? So yeah, I think it's a bunch of things that contribute to brain drain, but brain drain itself, I believe, is a symptom. And it could be remedied.
Yeah.
But I think it'll take some time, but also you need to look at it, I would say, from a sort of multidimensional point of view, because multiple things that affect brain drain, but
Yeah.
ultimately, a symptom.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think it lends itself back to the limited employment opportunities, right? The pay scale, things like that. But I think, part of what we have to move away from is, as a society, as a culture, we know we tend to recommend certain careers and certain positions and go study this, right? But I think we have to reframe our thinking into asking what are the needs? What are the gaps? Study that, come back and do it. Or, promoting things like financial literacy and entrepreneurship and things like that. So here's something that we don't have here. Let me start my own business, right? And so I think a lot of it has to do with shifting the way we were raised. Well, I'm speaking of my generation, you guys, but shifting that so that you today can start to think differently and not just do something just because, well, this is what, my family wants you to do, or this is what, the society or the culture promotes. Like 3 years ago when I did the guest address at the graduation ceremony at Common and Gravel, that's exactly what I spoke to, right? Like, yeah, this is what they might say. You have to be a doctor, a lawyer, this or that, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are several other careers you can pursue. And I think that could be part of some of the things we can start doing now to start to shift that issue and the brain drain. Yeah. Lily, low civic participation. I know you and Brandon are very much involved. So, if it's low, generally speaking, right, would you say that's a symptom or a larger problem?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Bubb. I would say it is a symptom more than the actual problem, because
Okay.
to me it reflects deeper underlying issues. So the last time we spoke here, I was not able to make it last month, but in April, I was actually actively considering putting up myself for a political role. So,
Okay.
yes. And from that time, since being elected as the chair of the NDC Youth Arm, I've been in contact with,
Congrats.
thank you, I've been in contact with so many young people, and I wanted to step up so that I can, because I obviously see the gap, right? I wanted to step up so that I can contribute to addressing the low civic engagement that we see in our communities. Now, a lot of the young people that I meet, they assume that government is responsible for solving all our community problems, even their personal problems, and many of them don't really understand the role of the government or even where the community or the individual responsibility lies. So it's definitely because we have low civic engagement. Persons don't know and persons are really not interested. So in my role as the youth chair, I am working 100% behind the scenes to get more young persons involved in our civic life. And I'm not only talking about getting involved in frontline politics. That is not for everyone, but just knowing what government is, how government works, what you can do to ensure that your government is on the ball, what you can do to make sure that if you believe government is going the wrong way, the ways you can address them, the ways that instead of just making a post on Facebook and thinking that it's going to solve your issue, like what are the actual ways to get your leaders to listen, whether it's government, opposition, whatever the leaders are. I think that most young people shy away from that civic life because there are deeper issues like mistrust, disengagement, and, well, this is not a place for young people. This is for older, educated people who have it all together. You're young. You don't know what you're talking about. And a lot of the times, as a young person, you may get just shh. And once they get that full stop, they don't want to speak again. So I want to make my country a place where persons that are way younger than me feel comfortable speaking about their civic life and the way that their country is going.
Well spoken. Very well spoken. I don't have much comeback for that. But it really starts, Lily, with what you're doing, but then with education, right? Education is power. When I say education, I'm not talking just about book education, but helping people understand their responsibility as citizens, right? Regardless of their age, helping them understand the importance of voting. And I'm not just talking about just voting for elections, right? If there's some voting going on in my school for who's going to be class for whatever it is, or what's the color of, what's going to be the color we're going to wear today, whatever, but getting them involved in those kinds of conversations, I think, honestly, Lily, and everyone here and everyone listening eventually, like that's how that shift has to start. It's changing that mentality. And I know there are several reasons too why, back home, for example, people might be a little timid. There's lots of stuff that happens behind the scenes, but the world is run by those who show up, right? That's a true statement, right? That'll always be true. So like the more we can help people just get involved from young in like the simplest things, it builds that level of responsibility in them where they want to get involved. And I think it's shifting away from, well, we have to let the older folks do that. Like you guys will be the one when we're gone, right? It's going to be your country. You're going to be living in it. So like, what are you doing now? And I appreciate you and all of you for however you step up to, to support the country and to support that cause. But we all have to lend our voice. And whenever someone says, well, I don't like any of the candidates, I'm not voting, right? You still go vote. It's your right. And then, okay, I contributed. I did what I needed to do. So kudos to you and thank you for doing it. But I totally agree with you that it's a symptom of larger issues. And if we really want to dig deep and really uncover, they're there. We know they're there. It's just how do we address them? So thank you for sharing that. Zadie, let's shift to you for a bit. So what systems or habits, I kind of talked about it a little bit, right? Or just behaviors in our community, on our island, like unintentionally keep challenges going, perpetuate them, right? And what are some new behaviors like we should be reinforcing instead? So like, for example, Lily just talked about, increasing civic engagement, like, not necessarily that you have to speak to that, but that's an example of something that continues perhaps unintentionally. And how can we shift that?
Right. So I definitely think that, one of the biggest bad habits that we have is a heavy reliance on our government. As, Lily would have mentioned, a lot of young people, and this is not to trash anybody because all of us, we do it, but we have a heavy reliance on our government and we feel as though the government should provide and do any and everything. But we also have to realize that as young people, we're very resourceful. So if there is a situation, whether it's you notice a rise in community violence, you notice there is a limited amount of jobs in a specific sector, or you feel as though young people aren't participating in community activities, then you can be the one to step up and form these groups or, build a business to promote new employment opportunities. So, that's definitely something that we could work on. We could work on being more proactive and also use social media to our advantage. Stay on top of things, stay at the forefront of knowledge and knowing what's happening and knowing what's available. And like I said, if there is a notice of a gap, be the one to step up and fill that gap yourself.
Yeah. And definitely step up to fill that gap. And it's starting somewhere. So like initially, it might seem like, well, it's just me or it's just me and someone else. But as long as we hang in there and we keep that movement going, it expands. And if you think of like all of the movements, whether it was a movement in Grenada or here or some other country, it started with the one, right? And then everybody came along, and going back to leadership, that servant leadership approach and that humble approach, can really help with things like that. So thank you for sharing that, Zadie. So Brandon, to kind of keep the conversation moving, we're known for our resilience. I mean, we could name a whole bunch of, situations and issues that, our country has lived through, us as individuals have lived through. So we're known for our collective mind. So like community oriented, family oriented, we're really big on that, right? Which cultural strengths in your perspective, Brandon, are some of the ones you would say that we should preserve, as an island, as a country, as a community, and reinforce to help develop the next generation of leaders like yourself, and then, who are really committed to joining the movement to solve community issues. So like getting engaged in mental health or civic engagement or whatever it might be. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. one of the culture's strength we must preserve is our sense of community. In Grenada, people used to know their neighbors, check on one another, spend time together, but today, because, people become so busy schedule, life changes, and technology and everything, many people become more isolated. We still have caring people, but the community spirit is not as strong as it once was. So we should intentionally reinforce values like togetherness, respect for all the elders, helping one another, the little things. And I believe once the community, as a community, we reinforce those stuff, a big difference in terms of community engagement or young people, the mindset, in terms of how you view certain stuff, and teaching those values, young people will lead more confidently, and that's what I believe. And if the next generation grows up, connected with the community, they will be more willing to step up, and help solve community issues.
Yes. 100%. I think definitely the community spirit, and started from young. So I went yesterday. I was mailing some stuff back home, but anyways, the owners of where I went to mail the stuff, their little daughter, she is 4, and I work with kids, so I'm always into kids. So she was shredding. So we just started talking. I was like, well, how she started preschool, whatnot. And like, yeah, she's starting soon. I was like, well, look, she's already learning. So by the time she gets there, she'll be taking the mail to the principal's office. She'll be, doing her little, she'll have her little jobs and stuff, but it lends itself to your point, Brandon. And so 100%, it's totally different whenever I come home now. That community spirit you spoke about, everybody knew their neighbors and stuff. It's definitely different now. I agree with you there. And I think leaning into that, and getting the kids, the children involved, and sometimes even qualitatively just going to another part. I know Birch Grove is really big on. They're really big on community things. So what is it that they do that gets their community involved, and how can we do it in our end too? Things like that. But I think sometimes just studying different parts of the island that have this big community spirit, and how can we, model that and reinforce that. But I agree with you that community aspect is one of the things, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That we want to support. So, Peter, let's talk a little bit about partnerships. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. What are your thoughts on that question?
Yes. So what I would say is definitely a strength that we have to preserve. And I think there would be no challenge in preserving it, because it's so, etched in our culture is unity. At the end of the day, there's strength in numbers. Our unity is our strength, not only in Grenada, but really and truly in the Caribbean region as CARICOM. We see whenever there are natural disasters, during the hurricane season, it may be Grenada today, it may be St. Lucia next year, no matter who it is, we all band together and we would contribute, we would support. Even recently, the unrests that have been happening in Cuba, for example, we have several, both at a national level and community level, groups and organizations that have been, collecting items to send to Cuba. So I believe our community, you could say it's community spirit as well, but our unity is really etched in our culture. And when you look at, at the primary and secondary school level, we have, and it may be viewed as insignificant, but it is significant. We have clubs, we have sporting events, we have local groups. So from young, we are taught to band up together, and it just, goes with us through each stage and each level of life as we progress. So I believe unity is definitely one of our top strengths, and it would not be leaving us anytime soon once we continue doing what we're doing and improving on what we're doing.
Yeah, united we stand, huh?
Divided we fall.
Oh, yes. Wonderful. Thank you for continuing that sentence. Yeah. So Peter, let's shift the conversation to you. Let's talk about partnerships between the island and diaspora, because we have several people from the island, like myself, who are currently in the diaspora and have the potential to strengthen communities. And so let's back up a bit. I'll just say, I did a recording with another guest yesterday, and she was talking about there's an initiative she wants to do back home, and she's been reaching out for some time now, and she's not getting any response from, the particular individual that she's been reaching out to, and she here is trying to help. And I can speak for myself too. I've several times reached out for certain things I wanted to support with and never really got a response, or got a response, and then, that was it. So I want to preface that by saying there are times we want to do things, but we're not getting the response that we would need, because depending on what it is, we cannot just show up and say, we're going to do those things, and we need to be able to form that partnership. So that is a very big barrier that I've experienced myself. And so you get to the point where sometimes you're like, well, is it worth it? Because you're doing all the things and you're not getting the response, so you can move forward. So in terms of partnerships, Peter, between the island and people in the diaspora, that has the potential to strengthen communities, influence systems, right? And just create lasting change. And what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are some partnerships that come to mind that if we're able to get the response, we can support with to help move the island forward?
So yes, very good point. So yeah, with the partnerships, I would say, but even before we get to partnerships, just as you mentioned with the responses, I don't know if it's a culture or something, but yeah, I've noticed that myself. Like, people may be interested in doing things. We come up with great ideas, but when it actually comes down to implementation, we fail miserably. Either it be untimely responses, no response at all. Someone like, I don't know what it is. Because I've heard that in the past. So, if we could really resolve that, whether it be a dedicated, I believe we have a ministry of our organization or whatever, diaspora affairs or something like that.
That's new. Yes, you're correct.
Yes, so we have that, but, it's ensuring that, these institutions run the way they're supposed to be run. So I would say just streamlining, what we already have, ensuring that it's efficient. And then even if we look at partnerships, as I said, there are people out there who want to help, whether it be through advising, whether, they might have come across some opportunity overseas and they think, it would benefit the youth or, citizens back home. So I believe a sort of tight-knit sort of partnership, just with, we have, I don't know whether it be a registry. So we have an idea of, which I believe we do, but I'm not sure how accurate it is in terms of, how many people we have abroad, where are they, what are the skills, what can they contribute. So, partnerships, whether it be at the government level, so government to government, through universities, whether it be subsidized tuition, whether it be scholarships, internships, people from Grenada, Grenadian citizens, they can go, to the advanced economies, whether it be temporarily for a few months, learn a skill, a trade, learn it at the highest level, and then they come back and actually contribute to the economy. Even person to person, citizen to citizen, which should be through the diaspora affairs. So under the government do what they can. And then citizen to citizen, you reach out. Look, I came across this opportunity, whether it be education, whether it be training, whatever it is that can enhance, our human capital. Those kind of partnerships would go a long way in, building community, influencing systems. But first of all, is ensuring that it's streamlined. So, with the actual right people in the right places, communication, seamless communication, all of that needs to be in place. And then we can really, see the benefits of these partnerships.
Yeah, I think one that comes to mind is, because I know it happens a lot. I don't believe it happens in Grenada, but like a semester abroad, or, there are high school students who, I've even at one point signed up to host some high school students. Well, they were not from Grenada, but the point is, I think that's something that will be very helpful and valuable to students, regardless of whether they're, at the high school level or college level, things like that. So I'm just saying there are ways, or, if a student is coming here to study and like, all right, well, and they're coming to this state, I'm here, I can help, meet that, whatever, things like that. So I just think there are so many ways that we can partner, to help move the country forward and just give people access to more opportunities, Yeah. All right. Well, let's start to close our conversation off for tonight. And so we're going to end as usual with our Monday morning move questions. So, Zadie, we'll start with you. What is one, Monday morning move, some small specific behavior that listeners can implement immediately, that really has a potential, Zadie? It's easy to implement, right? Simple, but to positively shift, their team, their family, their workplace, the community, or even themselves. What would you say?
I think one very simple thing that we can do, as individuals and as a community, is just being updated on, present affairs, the news, watching the news, listening to the radio, using social media as a productive tool rather than doom scrolling. There is so much knowledge, so much current affairs that you can be aware of through social media. So a little thing like that, a little practice like that, as in keeping up to date, can really transform how you go about your days, how you go about life, and generally just being aware.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, and it's I'm smiling because I always often see the themes across guests. So I had a session this morning, and this was not the Monday morning move that she shared, but she talked about that as, something we should be doing as individuals, just staying abreast of what's happening. Yeah. So, and that's very simple and easy to do. Thank you for sharing that. Brandon?
Yes, my Monday morning move is to ask one question: how can I help? Just imagine that. Imagine every Monday in the morning we ask just one person this question and actually meant it. For me, leadership isn't just about always, leading meeting or making big decisions. Sometimes it's about making someone, else's load a little lighter, and that's how, a team, gets stronger. That's how communities are built.
Yeah. And that's very easy, Brandon. Thank you. How can I help? Yes. Thank you. Paul.
For me, I reduce it to a phrase: all for one, one for all. Basically, you ensure you have the back of your team, and in return, your team will ensure they have your back.
That is so true. 100%. Thank you. All for one, one for all. Peter.
Yes, I would say, one Monday morning move would just be, I would say having a sort of calm start. Let's if you're looking at it literally to the week.
Yeah.
So, some Monday morning, some people may start, panicking, okay, I have this to do today. Oh, I have that to do during the week. I mean, you need to be aware of what you have to do, whether it be Monday or throughout the week. But I feel like, starting the day or the week in that sort of hurried, rushed temperament, I don't think that's the best. So, you're aware of what you have to do from on Monday and throughout the week, but you take it in strides. Accept the week. Okay, this is what this week could be. Stress yourself out, and you take it one step at a time. So just having a chilled, relaxed start to the week.
So being in the present, one moment at a time, right? Yes. Love that. Lily, and you get to close us out. You get to have the last word here. It makes me think of like debating, you always want to be the person to get the last word. Paul?
Yeah, but I was just thinking along the same lines as Peter. For me, I would say just smile and to be grateful on Monday morning, because that's like the worst day of the week for some people, because it's like they're off from the weekend, they have to go back to work, to school. But then when you think about it, you're starting a new week. What are you grateful for?
Yeah.
What are some things that you can do to make somebody else smile? So if you're happy, then you spread happiness on Monday morning.
Yeah, wonderful. You made me think of, so growing up, I don't know if you guys know this song. We used to sing the song. I don't know, they probably don't sing it anymore. Smile a while and do they still sing give your face a rest? Yeah. Yeah, so just smile, give your face a rest, and just have that positive outlook. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining this evening. As usual, it's always a pleasure having a conversation with you guys, like hearing your perspective, listening, and being open to learning from you. So I look forward to closing out the series with the last one, where we're all going to talk about how excellent you guys are and how you can help others, be excellent as well. So thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely, blessed evening and week.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, and same to you.
Very welcome.
Have a good night, everybody.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
All
Take
right,
it easy.
bye-bye.
Bye, have a good
All
night.
right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Behaviorally Speaking Leadership for Changemakers. Be sure to visit esthercbubbabaservices.com/blog for today's companion blog and additional leadership resources. Until next time, create the conditions for growth wherever you lead. I'm Dr. Esther Bubb. Stay inspired.